Good afternoon. Thanks for spending your lunch hour with us and joining us for our Renter to Homeowner webinar. I'm Corby Gage, the Executive Director of Coastal Housing Partnership. With us today is also Kim Pascage, the Program Manager for Coastal Housing Partnership. And today's webinar features two local real estate professionals, Ruth Ann Bovey from Village Properties and Mark Johnson from Guaranteed Rate. Both Ruth Ann and Mark are part of Coastal Housing Partnerships Network. And as part of this network, these real estate professionals make it easier for you to become a homeowner by reducing your closing costs. And that's available to any employee of a member of Coastal Housing Partnership. So the format for today's webinar, I will be asking Ruth Ann and Mark a number of questions about the process of going from renter to homeowner. And then the remainder of our time together will be for you to get your questions answered. It's important for us to address your questions, and we'll leave about 15 minutes to do that. We'll be recording today's webinar, so we can send you the link to this recording if you'd like to review it later. The webinar format means that your cameras are off and we cannot hear you. So if you have questions, the way to do that is to put them in the Q&A and we will get to your questions. You can ask your question anonymously or you can leave your name in there either way. Feel free to drop those questions in at any time through the webinar. When that topic pops up and if you have a question, just put that in there. That won't disturb anything and we will get to your questions. Kim will be fielding those and we'll get all of those questions answered. So the objective for today's webinar is providing you with guidance on how to make that leap from renter to homeowner. And so congratulations, you are taking the first important step to do that, and that is education. So panelists, thank you so much for being with us today. Wondering if you would just share a little bit about yourself. Ruth Ann, would you start?
Absolutely. My name is Ruth Ann Bovey. I'm with Village Properties. I have been a licensed real estate broker, broker associate for, well, I've been in the industry now for about 24 years and licensed for almost 18 now. And I taught a real estate class at Santa Barbara City College.
Thank you. Mark, would you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Mark Johnson. I work at Guaranteed Rate. I've been in lending for about 24 years also. So between Ruth Ann and I, we've seen a lot of different markets. I focus a lot with first-time home buyers, and it's just a pleasure to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you both. So the big question we always get asked, so we're going to start with this one right from the beginning, is now a good time to buy a home? Mark, with the current housing market and current interest rates, should someone wait to buy, or is this a good time to start that process?
Sure. And of course, the Federal Reserve raised their Fed fund rate today by a quarter point. So, you know, I'll tell you, I think it is a good time to buy. It seems like, you know, we get caught up a lot in mortgage interest rates right now. But the thing is, and one thing to keep in mind, and our industry uses this expression all the time, it's one of these things where it's like, you know, you marry your house. It's important to find the right house. But really, the interest rate, you can change that rate down the road. So you're kind of dating the rate, you know, you're not that committed, right? So that's one of the things we like to say. You know, I think also what I've noticed this year, definitely compared to last year, is that there's a lot more tools I have to be able to help buyers get into the market and not, you know, that help with interest rates. There's buy down programs that we didn't have a year ago that allow you to say, instead of an interest rate of 6%, in the first year, that rate might be 4%, and then it can go to 5%. So, of course, meeting with the lender, you'll learn more about those things, but I think it is a good time to start to look. You know, a couple other things, loan limits have changed in Santa Barbara County, which means that our loan limits are higher, which will allow for a little easier qualifying. So with the different tools and programs that are available, you know, I think now's a good time to get out there and start looking. How about you, Ruth Ann? What do you think?
Well, I mean, one other thing that they need to remember too is that a lot of people think that they need to have 20% to put down, and you don't. You can get in with as little as 3%. So when we're talking about options and just more tools to make it so that you can become a homeowner, they're definitely there. And in terms of buying, is now the right time? Yes, the best time to buy is when you can, because it's you don't know, your situation might change a year from now and maybe you wouldn't be able to buy then. So buy when you can, because that way you're not paying your landlord's mortgage, you're paying your own mortgage. And people are concerned there's nothing to buy, interest rates are high. We're anticipating that to change a little bit. We're expecting inventory levels to come up. You may not be able to buy your dream home now for the first round, but it is a great first step. And I also feel like right now, we're not seeing it as crazy with the multiple offers that we were seeing before, and they're not going so far over asking like they did before. What else? So there's Santa Barbara tends to lag behind when there's a market shift. And I just pulled some numbers today. Right now in the county of Ventura, there are 234 single family homes. So that means houses, not condos, that are under $1 million. Right now, Santa Barbara has 3. Now I'm talking about South Santa Barbara County from Goleta to Carpinteria. We have 3. But Ventura has already shifted. And so we will be seeing that shift over the next short amount of time, 3 months, 6 months. As an example of the market shifting, there was a house that was sold just over a year ago. And I realize that for this audience, the price range probably isn't in line, but the house was listed for $3.1 million. And these buyers bid $500,000 over asking price, and they got it. So for $3.6 million, they got their house. And a year later, they called back to work and they had to sell. And so now the market has shifted. They're not going to get 3.6 million. They listed it originally for 3.8, and now they're down to 3.3. So the market is changing. It is getting a little better. We're not seeing the crazy over asking prices, over asking offers. And I think that that'll make it a lot easier for first-time homebuyers in particular to step in.
Thank you. That's such great information about when to get started. Ruth Ann, what are some of the advantages of home ownership?
I think that one is that you really have a sense of accomplishment, like you did it, like this was a goal. It is an American dream to be a homeowner, and you've done it. You're settled. You don't have to worry anymore. Your rent is not going to go up. You open the door and this home is your home. And so you don't have the uncertainty about the rental consistency and, is your landlord going to sell your home? You're building equity and wealth over time. You can make improvements to the property. If you want to paint your house purple, okay, the interior, your neighbors may not like if you paint the exterior purple, but you can do what you want to the house and make it your own. There are also some tax benefits of home ownership. We recommend that you meet with an accountant. And then if you do your own taxes, I would highly recommend that you still meet with an accountant and have an accountant CPA do your taxes the first year that you're a homeowner. It's definitely a good idea because there's going to be nuances that they will know that if you're using a tax program, it's just not going to be as good. And I'm not talking about an H&R Block type. Those people tend to be newer. You want to get a seasoned accountant to help you.
Great, that's
thing to add.
great information. Ruth Ann, before we go on to Mark, or while we're on Mark, we have a little bit of an echo from you. I'm wondering if it's two screens or if you're also on your phone. Could you check that out?
No, it's just me. What I might be able to do is put some headphones in.
Okay, well, Mark's responding to that. Maybe let's give that a try. Do you have anything to add, Mark, to the benefits of home ownership?
Sure. I actually, ironically, this morning I met with a client of mine who bought a home about 4 years ago. They're first-time home buyers. And I said to him, I said, boy, I'll tell you what, you guys, I feel like, you got such a great deal on your house and you must be so excited. And he's like, yeah, we've redone our kitchen. We're really making it our own. It's just been such a great thing. And he said to me, he said, when we were going through the process, though, it felt like we were buying at the top of the market. And I feel like one of the things that you all might be thinking is, gosh, well, what's the market? Is it the top of the market? Where is it going? And, the thing is, by them not waiting, by them getting into the market 4 years ago, and granted their timing was good, they've made about $300,000 on their home. They paid about $800,000 at the time. And, they're just plugging away with sweat equity and they're just doing great. And so, rather than giving that money to the landlord, they're really growing and building their equity. And I just know that over time, the clients that, we've put into homes, that is just one of the best ways to start to build wealth. And so kind of back to Ruth Ann's point, it's like the best time to buy is when you can, because I feel like over time, you really are, even with cyclical markets, you're still going to build wealth over time. So that is my 2 cents.
That's a great example. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ruth Ann. And Ruth Ann, what would you say is the first step in moving from renter to homeowner?
I think can you hear me better now?
That is better. Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You want to prepare a budget. You want to have a realistic picture of what your expenses are. Look at where you can cut back on expenses to add to your savings. All agents want to see a pre-approval letter from a local lender, and I'm going to stress local lender because it just removes a lot of stress from you. Please do not use an online lender. They have no accountability because their reputation is not at stake. So please use a local lender like Mark. And meet now with the local lender. Even if you're not ready to buy for a year, it's really a great idea to meet with a lender first. We cannot write an offer if you don't have a pre-approval letter. And so he can help you get ready to buy. A lender can help you figure out what you need to get yourself in a better position down the road to even possibly get a better interest rate.
Great. So Ruth Ann, just to clarify that, when you're saying online lender, are you meaning like an e-lender? Because I know most of the local lenders, most of the process is online and virtual rather than having to meet in their office. Are you meaning specifically an e-lender you should avoid at this point?
Correct. You do not want to use somebody that is not based here in Santa Barbara, preferably. You can go a little outside of Santa Barbara, but really, as realtors, when we submit an offer, or let's say that I'm the listing agent and an offer comes into me, or I get multiple offers. If there are 2 offers that are identical and one person is using a lender that is not in our state or not in our area, and there's another one where they're using a local lender that we know is good and qualified and gets the job done, that's the offer that we're going to take. So you want to make sure that as a home buyer, you're using the lender that will help get your offer accepted. Does that make sense?
A negotiating tool, then, it sounds like.
Correct.
Great. Yeah, and so that's Santa Barbara or Ventura County, because we serve both Santa Barbara County and Ventura County.
Correct.
So Mark, in addition to real estate agents wanting to see that pre-approval from a local lender, what are some of the reasons that why someone would need to meet with a lender sooner rather than later?
Well, I think we always say one of the best time to meet with a lender, it really is it's never too early. And the reason why we say that, and lenders, we want you to meet with us. I'd say 80% of my job is really spent with people that are getting pre-qualified, they're getting pre-approved, they're learning what they need to do, like Ruth Ann mentioned earlier, prepping to buy a house. What is the budget and things like that. And meeting with the lender really helps you develop a game plan. There's just so many things over the course of 24 years that I've learned about people and transactions and just the whole process that we're able to share, on an initial meeting or phone call, just to even kind of help you get the process started to prepare to buy a home. So I think the meeting, it's never too soon. And also I want to really stress, it's never a waste of time. This is really what we all do. It's about education. It's about learning. It's about how to get ready to be ready to buy. And you do not waste a lender's time by, picking up the phone, shooting an email, setting up, a little time to talk, because that's really what we're here for. And I think that's just really important.
And I
So
want to
even if you
add
think
that
it's a couple years away. Mark, you think it's still a good idea to meet with a lender now if someone doesn't think they're ready for a couple years?
Two things. Yes, I've worked with people for up to 4 years, and it was one of my best, favorite stories of helping someone buy a home. It took 4 years. And second, Ruth Ann, what was your question? You were going to say something.
Oh, no, now I've kind of lost my thought, but it had to do with, I'm sorry, I totally lost my thought.
It'll come back to you when it does.
I'll just say real quick then, Corby, and just to let everyone know, I met with this family, and it took them 4 years to buy a home. Every year, they would come and drop their tax returns off. We would kind of put a game plan together, and for whatever reason, circumstances would change. They kept saving money. And then, finally, when they were really ready to pull the trigger, about 6 years ago or so, they bought a home for their family. They finally had, saved about $80,000 to put down. And, I was so thrilled when they finally were able to buy that home, and the smiles on their face. I mean, it was really, I felt like, gosh, working 4 years with them really helped change their lives, because they'd rented for years and years and never thought they'd buy a home. So those are the really rewarding things.
And I did remember. So Mark was talking about, yes, even if you're a few years out, you should meet with a lender. And I'll tell you right now, if your lender is not willing to sit down with you, regardless of how far out, if they're not willing to sit down with you and help you form a game plan, that's not the right lender for you. You need to find somebody that is willing to spend the time. That's what we do. It is never a waste of our time. It's part of the job.
Good. I'm glad you remembered that point, Ruth Ann. I think that, to me, that's a really good example too of if you're working with a good lender. I mean, when I hear Mark's story about working with someone for 4 years, favorite transaction, I've heard that multiple times from really good lenders. Is they say their favorite transactions are the ones that took a long time. So don't worry if you don't think you are ready. You're going to find out where your readiness situation is by talking to a lender. And you are in control of who you use as a lender. If you meet with someone and you don't think they're, giving you the time of day, they don't think they're, giving you enough information, or interviewing with you because you're not ready to buy right away, that's a good indication that you might find another lender, and you're not obligated to stay with someone because you start with them. You want to have a lender who you feel really comfortable with, is answering all your questions, and feels like, they're really giving you the time of day and working with you to get that game plan going. Great. So Mark, if someone doesn't have 20% down, should they be working to get to that, or where is that?
Well, let's talk about that. So one of the things when you do meet with the lender, putting together that game plan is important. And one of the things that's, one of the things we talk about myths in lending is that you need to save up for 20% down. I don't know about you guys. I live in California. I've been to the grocery store lately. It's not easy to save 20%. And so there are great programs that allow for as little as 3% down for first-time home buyers, 3.5% down. There's all kinds of sources, as well as for us to look at in terms of what you have for your down payment that you might not even be thinking you have. For example, a lot of you have 401ks, and you can borrow up to 50% of a 401k and pay yourself back. So there's no penalties. There's no problem with that. So meeting with the lender is going to help you kind of create a game plan. But for sure, don't think you have to save, up to 20% down before you can, talk to Ruth Ann or Realtor. That's not necessary. There's a lot of programs out there.
Great. So good to know. Well, Mark, what does the lender need from a potential buyer in order to provide that pre-approval? And is there a charge for that service?
So, we're a cheap date. There's no charge for us to work on getting a pre-approval. And here's what we're going to need. We talked about online. Well, what's typically going to happen here in town with most of the lenders that are part of coastal housing is that all of us have different variations on, how to get your documentation to us. We're going to ask you to fill out a short questionnaire. It's going to be a little bit of information about yourself, your employment history. Maybe you're self-employed, maybe you work for a company here in town. And then you're going to be providing things like a month of your bank statements, investment accounts, retirement accounts, pay stubs, your W-2s and tax returns. Those are a lot of the things that we may ask for. For our process, we only do a soft credit pull now, so you don't have to have even a ding on your credit at this point. So there's no cost, there's no harm to your credit, and really what you're doing is just building a wealth, good about information about what you will be able to qualify for. Couple other things on there. One of the things that pre-approval does is kind of gives you a baseline, kind of where you're starting, and sitting down with a lender will help you. And maybe you'll find out, hey, honestly, we need to wait another 6 months. Maybe we need to wait 4 years. But, in the end of the day, like we said earlier, you're going to work with a lender who's going to be fine with, okay, yeah, let's put a game plan together, because that's what this is about. Ideally, you submit all those items, we take a look at your situation, and the next thing you know, you're ready to go out and start shopping for a house. And that can be as quick as 24 to 48 hours, depending on how, quickly you can get things in.
That's amazing. And great to know about the credit, because I know that's always a concern people have is, oh, you're going to, pull my credit and then my credit score is going to go down. So that's a great change to be able to have the lender pull your credit and know what that credit score is. So how important of a role, Mark, does credit play in a home purchase? And is there something someone should do to improve their score? A lot of times I hear people say, oh, I want to get my credit in really great shape before I meet with the lender. Is that a good idea? Where are we with this whole credit score?
Sure. Okay. Again, such a great reason to meet with the lender first, because credit is very important. When you're looking at credit, the higher the score, the better the interest rate. But let me go over a few things about credit. If you guys can bear with me a minute, I want to dive into a few things that are important about credit. One is, don't think that you have to pay off all your credit cards down to zero and then close them all out. In fact, don't close them all out. We've had people think that they're doing themselves a favor by paying their balances down to zero and then closing their cards out. The next thing you know, in 6 months, you don't even have a credit score because nothing's reporting to the credit bureaus. So the best thing you can do is always keep your credit card balances down to about 1/3 of the limit or less. That's going to help generate a positive score. A couple other things too is, don't feel like if you don't have perfect credit, that's okay. Come in, sit down, meet with a lender. We've got credit repair people that, can actually help guide you without huge charges, with just helping give you some guidance on what to pay down. Medical collections in Santa Barbara are crazy. So what happens is we see a lot of collections you don't even know you have because LabCorp forgot to bill you to the correct address. And the next thing you know you have a collection. Those can be cleaned up. So if you have some things like that, a lot of those things can get cleaned up and removed to help fix your score. And then a couple other things. If you're thinking about buying in the next few months, try and avoid running down to BMW and buying a brand new car for $1,200 a month. Another thing I'd say is, I know that you love your cousin and you want to help your cousin out, but once you co-sign for that new car for the cousin or that mortgage for the cousin, you're on the hook for that payment. It's going to show up on your credit report, and we're going to have to count that payment against you. A lot of people don't realize that. Also, if you're kind of having to help your cousin out and co-sign, chances are there's a reason, and they may be not very good at making their payments. And they miss a payment or two, and your credit is tanked. So I think it's really important to kind of remember those things. If you guys, did I miss anything that we want to talk about? I think there's a couple other things about jobs and whatnot. If you'd like, I can move on from credit real quick, Corby.
Well, I'm wondering, like, what would be more important for someone? How would they know whether they should be trying to pay off all their debt or be saving money for a down payment? Is there kind of a balance in there? Or is that something to talk to a lender about?
Yeah, that's again, one of the things that we look at is, so we take a look at, okay, you say, well, I want to pay all my debt off. But we might see that there's one credit card or one installment payment that has a high monthly payment, but it doesn't take too much to pay that off. So we'd say, hey, why don't you pay this particular liability off? Don't worry, and we'll kind of balance out, what are you saving versus what are you paying off? And that is something that, we always analyze when we sit down with somebody, is to take a look and say, hey, we can help you buy. In fact, I have a borrower who's got a $1,200 a month truck payment. And I was like, shoot, that's like $200,000 worth of mortgage right there. What could we do about that? Is there something we can do with that? So we definitely want to take a look at those. And I would say doing that with a lender is going to help guide you into making some choices that will enable the home buying process a little bit more. If you're not sure what to do, again, that's part of our job. It's what we do all the time.
It sounds like it's a really good idea to talk to the lender about the credit. I hear over and over people doing things that try to get their credit in really great shape, and it kind of sends a score the other way because the scoring model is a little complicated, and the lender is looking at these credit scores every day, all day. They know the things that are hurting you, the things that you could do to improve, as well as also helping you save for that down payment. So that's really great information, Mark.
Great.
So Ruth Ann, do you often find that someone is ready to buy sooner than they think?
I do, and I want to talk about that. But what I want to make sure that we didn't miss was about changing jobs and about becoming self-employed. Mark, did you want to touch on that one?
I was going to real quickly. Yeah, if you're if you're working for a company right now and you're W-2 and you're contemplating, a job change that changes into where you would receive 1099 or self-employed income, we've got to have a 2-year history of that. So the more stability you can have not making those changes, if you're thinking about buying, the better. And I have a good example of that in a little bit. We'll get to it.
Okay, great. And then in terms of, do I find that someone is ready to buy sooner than they think? Absolutely. You don't know until you meet with a lender. You don't know. Are you even in a position to buy yet? So once you meet with the lender, you'll find that out. I have a great example. Had some clients that were coastal housing partnership people, and they didn't think that they would be ready for a year. We ended up having them meet with a lender. Within a month, they were in escrow on their first home, and it was a condo, and they felt that it was a perfect home for them. It was 3 bedrooms, more than they anticipated. And then they had 2 babies that they were not expecting to have. And all of a sudden, this condo, because it was built in the 70s and the staircase was open, just potential harms for babies, we decided to sell their home. And we were able to get them from a condo into a house, a single family house, single level, no stairs. And their mortgage payment was identical because they had built up enough equity on the condo that their payment didn't even go up. So my point about, you may not buy your dream home the first time, they bought their dream home the second time. So,
and that first home helped them do that. So that's a great example.
Yeah.
How about you, Mark? Do you find
I-
someone is ready to
I-
buy sooner than they think? Is that
I
frequent?
do. I have such a great example. So again, another coastal housing person came in with his brother, and they wanted him to buy this particular guy was employed, had a W-2 income, but he was also a photographer, and he did a lot of weddings and different things. And he was ready to go out on his own. He had money saved up, and he's ready to just quit his day job, become a photographer. And then once he did that, he was going to buy a house. So I was like, I'm glad you came in. What if we flip that around? Because you qualify to buy a home now. If you become a photographer, you're going to have a lot of expenses starting off. You're going to want to write all those expenses off. I'm not going to have any income for you to qualify. We're going to have to wait 2 years. And this is about 4 or 5 years ago now. You're going to have to wait 2 years, and then maybe you won't even be able to buy. Again, going back to Ruth Ann's point, it's a good time to buy when you know you can. So he was like, okay. And he was really like, I'll just do this. I'll meet with you. So we meet, we sit down, we go through numbers. He goes and he looks at a condo that weekend up in Buellton at Vineyard Village. And like on Sunday, he buys. So he buys this place. I have gotten more phone calls. That family they're lovely people. And they've been like, you helped change our brother's life. He got married. He's had a kid. He bought this condo. Again, he's made a couple $100,000 on this condo. And if he'd have waited, and started his photography business back then, we would have lost 2 years. Prices would have gone up. He wouldn't have qualified now. He wouldn't be owning anything today. And I would absolutely tell you, this guy, he would tell you that. It really did change his life for he and his family. And again, he wasn't thinking he was going to buy at all. And it's one of the best decisions he's made. So, Corby, I think I played you the voicemail.
Yes, you did. And I love that. That was a wonderful one. That's what we live for, right? I mean, those are the great examples. And you can certainly see, why meeting with the lender and the real estate agent sooner rather than later makes so much sense. It's like you don't want to be, thinking you're ready to buy in 2 years, and maybe you're ready to buy in 4 months. I mean, that's what the lender will tell you. And it takes everything from this uncertainty to a real certain place. You can see hard numbers. You can see exactly what your payments are, particularly with what we pay for rent in this town. It's amazing how much mortgage you can get for that payment. So those are great examples, and I hope they encourage people to take that step to talk to a lender and an agent. So Ruth Ann, at what point should a potential home buyer meet with a real estate agent?
As soon as possible. I mean, you can meet with a lender first, but you shouldn't have to. I mean, I welcome anybody that wants to come in and talk to me about buying a house. I love what I do. First-time home buyers are my favorite people to work with. So, I realize that when you're a first-time home buyer, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You have no idea. And you may hear from a variety of different people, but the information you get is going to be different, because if it's your parents, it could be 20 years ago when they bought their house and they're telling you what it's like to buy a house based on old information. So meet with a realtor and make sure that it's a realtor that, again, is going to take the time to sit down with you and explain the whole process. This webinar is really about what are the next steps, to get started. But it doesn't explain what the whole process is. And somebody needs to help you understand that, because it will alleviate a lot of stress for you. So I would say, wait. And I'm kind of looking at my notes here to make sure that I don't miss anything. When should you start looking at houses in neighborhoods? What I would say is, let's wait until you meet with the lender, because the lender is going to tell you not only what you can qualify and how much money you have to have for a down payment, they're going to tell you what your payment is going to be. And that's going to be principal, interest, insurance, and property tax. And when you hear that number, it may be more than you're comfortable with. So you need to talk to your lender and say, okay, I'm not comfortable with that payment. What can we do for this payment? And then let him tell you. And then when you meet with your realtor, your realtor can say, okay, based on this purchase price, these are the neighborhoods that you can buy in. What we don't want you to do is go looking at open houses. We don't want you to go running around and get your hopes up for something that you're not going to qualify for. If you love looking at houses, fine, go look, but don't get your hopes up. Let's see what you can qualify for and let your realtor help direct you to the areas and the types of homes that you can qualify for.
Sounds like it's so important to have a really good home buying team and to be picking the right professionals. I think that's a real important thing. So on that note, Ruth Ann, how do you select a real estate agent? How do you know who to choose?
Well, it's funny. Everybody knows a realtor. This is a very small, incestuous town, and everybody knows, if not one, a dozen realtors. And so the question becomes, do you use your friend? That isn't always the best idea, because what if it doesn't work out for you? What if your friend isn't doing what you feel they should be doing or what you need for them to be doing for you? How do you fire your friend? So what I recommend is interview a few different agents, talk to them about their experience, not just their long-term experience. I said I've been in the industry for 20 something years, but look at what they've been doing recently. If your realtor has not done a handful of transactions in the last year, they're probably out of touch with what's going on in the market right now. Make sure that they have the knowledge, not just of the inventory, but that they have the knowledge on how everything works and how to negotiate on your behalf for the best. And make sure that you like them. Make sure that you feel comfortable with them and that you feel like they are putting you in front of everything. It's not about the paycheck. It is really about helping our clients get into homes. I want you to be able to buy a house. Most realtors, the really good realtors, that's what it's going to be about. I mean, with Coastal Housing Partners, we're giving up a big piece of our credit that of our commission that ends up being thousands of dollars that is credited to the buyer for their closing costs. And we are willing to give that up. I'm happy to give it up because it helps buyers get into their homes. So those are the things. But the comfort level is really going to be an important factor as well.
Oh, those are great tips, Ruth Ann. Mark, do you have anything to add to how to select an agent?
Well, of course, I have an example. So, yeah, I do. When you talk about knowledge and, maybe, choosing the right agent, I recently had a transaction where my clients were buying out of town, and the real estate agent was also from out of town, and I didn't know them. Well, they also happened to be, this was their first transaction. And I didn't know the borrower, I didn't know my clients were in escrow. We write pre-approval letters all the time, and I didn't know they were in escrow because the real estate agent didn't know that I needed to get a copy of the purchase contract. Well, the first thing a lender needs once you get an accepted offer is, we need the contract so that we can get your loan started. So I waited, I didn't even know, 2 weeks go by, and the borrower says, hey, are you going to ever order the appraisal? And I was like, for what? And he's, well, we're in contract. I'm like, with what? The realtor didn't know that I even needed the purchase contract. So, you can imagine what the rest of the transaction was like. So it's really important that you work with an experienced realtor so that you don't run into those kinds of problems.
I do want to add one little caveat to that. I agree. However, that's not to say that you can't work with a new agent. You just have to work with a new agent that has a really great mentor, that has a mentor that is holding their hand while they're helping you through the transaction. Somebody that can step in if there's a concern or a problem. I love giving new agents opportunities. So
that's great. So Ruth Ann, what is the role of a real estate agent? I mean, someone often might find their home online and they think, oh, do I even need an agent? What's the whole role of the agent?
So do you need your own agent? Absolutely, you do. So when you think about it, if you find a home online and you call the listing agent, that listing agent is connected to a seller. They are already connected to that seller and they have a fiduciary obligation to that seller. So if you try to buy a property through that listing agent, how can they possibly do their best for you when they're already committed to doing the best for the seller? So you need somebody that's going to be fully on your side. What they're going to do, what your agent should do is educate you and help you through the process. Really, they should alleviate a lot of stress relating to the home buying. My buyers don't even know half of what I do because I'm in there fighting for them. I'm in there taking care of the fires and putting them out before they even happen. Your realtor is going to be your best way to research neighborhoods because we know them all. I've sold properties in pretty much every neighborhood in the area, and we know them and we know what the values are in each of the neighborhoods. We're going to support you all the way through the escrow process. And that escrow process is the time period from the time that you make your offer and it's accepted to the time that you actually get your keys. And a lot of first-time homebuyers don't realize that that's about 30 days. There are contingencies in an offer. That contingencies are reasons for a buyer to back out without losing their deposit. So there's going to be a loan contingency. There's going to be an inspection contingency. There's going to be a variety of contingencies that are a safety net for a buyer when they make an offer. It isn't that you're making an offer and this is the house you have to buy. If you find out the neighbors are drug dealers, you can back out. I wouldn't want to live next door to that. If you find out that there's mold or foundation issues or just a lot more that you wouldn't have expected, your agent is going to help you with that. And they're going to help you get out of buying the house. And they're going to just keep you aware of everything that you need to know. And the fees that are paid to the agents are not paid by the buyer. So that's another thing that a lot of home buyers don't realize is that when an agent, and this is how it is now, that may shift in the next year or two, but right now the way that it works is when an agent takes on a listing, they negotiate with the seller what the commission will be, and that commission is split with the buyer's agent. So you're not paying your realtor, so there's no reason for you not to have your own realtor, especially if you have a realtor that is smarter than the listing agent. That's going to help you an awful lot. And again, working with coastal housing partner agents, you have to do that. If you're part of this, you would be crazy not to, because that's money in your pocket. And again, it's thousands of dollars. I remember I paid $7,000 at one point to a gentleman that works at Decker's, $7,000. And I was perfectly okay with that.
That's a great source for them to reduce their closing costs. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like that role is really one of holding someone's hand, holding the buyer's hand through the process, and just really making them not feel alone. That's incredible. So, Mark, do you have any final thoughts on this process of going from renter to homeowner?
I think you just mentioned it. I think buying a home when you're going through it the first time, it can be stressful. It can feel daunting. But, I think like you've heard today, there are people here, and particularly through the Coastal Housing Partnership, that are going to be able to hold your hand through the process and make it fun and make it exciting. I think that's really important. So once you get kind of moving, you'll see that this is stuff that we do all the time, and we're really able to help you out. But do your homework, interview, a few people, see who you really kind of vibe with, who really makes, who you're comfortable with, because you're going to be hanging out with them for a while as you go through this process. But there's really great people here to help. And then, once you finally get those keys, you're going to just feel this amazing sense of accomplishment and pride. And it's just so exciting. So, and I just want to say it was just a pleasure today to be able to help with, I know we've got a few questions to answer, quite a few. So anyway, we look forward to answering some of your questions too.
Yeah, before we get to those questions, Ruth Ann, do you have any final thoughts on this process of going from renter to homeowner?
I've got a whole lot of thoughts, but I won't cover them all today. The key thing is, don't be afraid. Go meet with a lender, go meet with a realtor. Don't let them push you. Don't let them push you to buy sooner than you're ready. Don't let them push you to buy something that is more expensive than you want. Don't let them push you. They shouldn't be pushing you. Encouraging you, absolutely. But don't let them push you. They're not on your side if they're pushing too hard.
That's great. Great advice. And, both Mark and Ruth Ann have alluded to the closing cost savings. When an employee of a coastal housing partnership member employer is working with someone within our coastal housing network, and you can find that network, those network partners on our website. Kim, maybe you can put that in the chat, a link to that. Maybe you already have, but the folks, the lenders, the real estate agents, home inspection firms, all offer savings on the closing costs. So if you can work with someone within that network, you can save usually 50% or more on your closing costs. So really encourage you to take advantage of this benefit that your employer is giving you and save some money on those closing costs. So let's go to questions, Kim. What's our first question? Looks like we have quite a few.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So the first question is, does this advice apply to a VA loan as well?
That
Mark.
was early in our conversation, I think. So is that sitting down with the lender, I think, is probably what we're referring to. And I think for sure it does. VA loans are great loans, but also with a VA loan, we want to take a look at, kind of where you are with things as well. So I think it can apply.
Yeah, definitely. If you are eligible for a VA loan, you should explore that with a lender, because that's a really nice opportunity for you.
Yep.
Great. And then back when we were talking about your credit score, what is the average credit score you're looking for as a lender?
Yeah, I see about 3 or 4 questions here. So I can just shoot them all out here. It's going to be a range. If you're looking for a jumbo loan, loan amounts over $805,000, lenders are looking for credit scores 760, 780 to get the very best rates. 720 kind of as a minimum. If it's a regular conventional loan, which are the kind of conforming loans, FHA loans, things like that, it's a range with that can go down as low as, if you've got a 620 FICO score, we can still get you an okay loan. So it's just a big range. And then within that, there's always room to be able to kind of work with you to bump those scores up. And then I noticed that there was someone who I know, Madi, asking about multiple lines. And yeah, Madi, we do want to have multiple lines, and you, instead of just having maybe one credit card, if you've got a couple of credit cards, lenders are usually looking for about 4 trade lines. So we look for about 4 trade lines for about 2 years. So that's something that I think answers Madi's question. I'm glad you're here. Do you want me to tackle the personal loans also?
Yeah, that would be great.
And can everybody see these questions, or do you want to read the question out loud?
Yeah, I can read it. Sure. So the next question was, Madi's question was, should you have multiple credit lines and how can this help? Fernando has a question. Do personal loans have a negative effect on your credit score, and should those be paid off before speaking or working with a lender? Well, we say speak with the lender about those personal loans. And let's talk about those. Are they reporting on your credit? And if you're paying them on time, then it's okay. Chances are, though, a personal loan probably isn't. And so we'd want to kind of find out what the monthly payment is that you have to make. And that's something that probably isn't going to show up on your, on your credit report. So we just kind of want to talk that through first. And I would say maybe don't do anything yet, hang on to your cash, make the payment, and let's meet with the lender to kind of talk about that specific situation.
And I want to add to that too, talking about having a personal loan, even if it doesn't show up, be honest with your lender. Tell them anything.
Yeah.
Because they're there to help you buy a house. Be honest with your lender, be honest with your realtor. So if you've got debt, we need to know about it, because what we don't want to do is put you in a position where you buy a home that you ultimately can't afford and you have the possibility of losing that. So I'm glad that personal loan thing came up, because it's important, even if it doesn't show up on your credit report, to be honest about it and share that information with your lender.
Yep. Agreed. And then again, we're here to help. We're not the underwriter. We're not the person making the decision for an approval or not. We're the people to help get you ready to, have your loan reviewed. So that's a good point, Ruth Ann. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, those are great questions. And the next question I see is, can you talk a little bit about owning a manufactured home versus a house?
Absolutely. And I actually love this question, because I have put several buyers into manufactured homes that never would have expected to. For some reason, people have this idea in their head that it's not a great thing to do. And it depends on the situation. When you look at manufactured homes these days, you can't even tell that they're manufactured homes. You go inside of them and you have no clue that it's prefabricated. You feel like you're in a house. And the key thing with manufactured homes, many of the manufactured home parks, it's a different type of lender. So you would want to check with your realtor on who to use. Mark, you don't do manufactured homes, do you?
No, we've got a guy. Everybody in town uses the same guy.
Right. And so the difference is, the two types of manufactured home parks: one, you don't actually own the land, you just rent the land. And those rental fees, quite honestly, manufactured home parks are probably the best. To buy the whole park is probably the best investment you can make, because you're getting a ton of rent for this little tiny piece of land, and you don't have to do much with it because the buyer owns the house on it. So they take care of everything related to that. But it can get expensive. I know in Carpinteria, some of the manufactured home parks have fees of $1,100 or $1,200, and that right there is $200,000 in mortgage, as Mark mentioned earlier. There are some, like Rancho Goleta, which is a beautiful manufactured home park, that the owners own it. So it's in basically a nonprofit, and there are 200 shares because there are 200 units, and each owner owns one share, and their association fees are only $200 a month. And that's because they have this beautiful lake, they have a beautiful clubhouse, they have a swimming pool, just all these amazing benefits, and it's $200 a month. So definitely worth looking into if you're open to it. Absolutely. And they tend to be less expensive than homes.
Sounds like it's a good idea to explore it and understand the difference from a lender standpoint on what those costs are versus getting into a condo, so you can make that evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have 3 lenders in Coastal Housing Partnership that we work with that offer manufactured home loans. So
good to know.
That's an option for you.
Great. And then the next question is, as far as job changing, is retirement from the county in the no category if you're considering buying?
Yep.
Buying.
So it would depend. So then if you're going from so if you're retiring from the county, congratulations, Connie, I think. And then also it would depend on what your retirement is afterwards. If you've got a pension with the county and Social Security, and we're adding all that income up, then we can kind of figure it out. Or if you're going to be working a little bit longer and you can qualify with that income, that'd be a good time to maybe buy. And again, perfect reason. That's a great example of a good reason to come sit down with the lender.
And once you retire, the coastal housing benefits are no longer available. So they are only available to current employees of member companies.
Thank you, Corby. And then Ruth Ann, how do you find a good real estate agent? And is there a fee to work with a real estate agent?
And I think that we did talk about that. And for all of you that are on this webinar, the first place you want to look is on the list of participating agents that are part of the Coastal Housing Partnership, and then interview them. And is there a fee for working with them? Not a fee to you. Like I mentioned, that fee is pre-negotiated on the listing side. So while it's the buyer's money that is being given to the seller for the price of the home, it's the seller that is paying the commission to both sides. So there is no fee. There should not be a fee. Now, there are some companies that do have a fee. We don't.
So another good reason to have an agent working for you and to not be using the seller's agent.
Right. And ask when you're interviewing realtors, are there any fees to you that I will need to pay?
Mhm.
You can ask a lot of questions. It's the best thing you can do when you're thinking about buying is ask a lot of questions. There are no stupid questions and there are never too many questions.
And we have a lot of good questions to come up to here. You guys have been reading. We have some good ones.
Yeah, I know. These are
Okay.
great questions. Yeah, the next question is on mortgage insurance. I have to pay mortgage insurance if I put less than 20%. Do I still need to continue to pay the mortgage insurance once I've reached the 20%?
So when you reach 78% loan to value and you pay it down, mortgage insurance automatically drops off. But I also just want to real quickly address the fact that there's programs in town, like through workforce housing, that provide a second mortgage that's a pretty good deal. That would mean you wouldn't actually have to have mortgage insurance, and you could have less than 20% down and not have mortgage insurance. So there's some options.
Great reason to meet with a lender.
Yep. And there's also a question about Ventura. We lend all over, I lend all over California, Colorado. There are a lot of places. So absolutely, Mark Johnson loves to work in Ventura. I do a lot of work out of town. So it feels like in town to me. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we did answer the question on multiple credit lines here. And then does Coastal Housing Program help us with the closing cost?
And that
or
one
help
just,
us?
we talked about this, the coastal housing is going to help out with credits towards the closing costs. So as Ruth Ann mentioned, sometimes these credits from the realtors are very big. Those will go towards closing costs. We also have a credit towards your appraisal up to about $1,000 from us as well. So everyone does have credits. The closing costs or the down payment, though, still that needs to come from you. And again, sitting down with the lender and talking about that range, again, we can help with, but you can't get a closing cost. You can't get a down payment from Coastal Housing.
But I do want to point out too, that when you think about it, as a buyer, you need to have closing cost funds. And if those are taken care of, then that money that you would have had, exactly. We just cannot apply our credit. The lenders will not allow us to apply our credit to your down payment. It has to be to your closing costs.
And the closing cost credit is not from Coastal Housing Partnership. It comes from the network partners that we work with. So it's important that you work with a network partner if you're looking for those closing cost credits. It's not from Coastal Housing Partnership.
Correct.
And then Mark, on the lender applications, they're saying that they ask for what type you're looking for, like single family or condo. And you could say that you're open to multiple types, right? Or
so when you fill that out, we know you're looking at, lenders know it might be a condo, it might be a single family home. We know that. So that's fine. You can just click whichever one you want. We're going to change your income. We're going to change everything on your application, except for probably your employment history and where you live. A lot of stuff gets adjusted because, as the process goes along, things get adjusted. So you don't have to particularly choose one or the other. That's totally fine. Just select, single family and that's okay. I also noticed Bryant asked the question about San Luis Obispo County and Arroyo Grande. And yes, we do loans up there. I think we answered the question. We do.
And that does qualify. It can be San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, or Ventura County. So those are where you can receive that discount. So,
And as for realtors, I work in Ventura and I work in Santa Barbara up through the valley. I don't go into Santa Maria. I don't go into San Luis Obispo. Do we have any agents that on our team that on the coastal housing? We do. Okay,
Yes,
so
it's important that you ask, your agent what areas they cover, so that you are working with an agent that knows the area that you're interested in.
but yes, we do have agents that cover North County, South County, and Ventura County. So, and all of those areas. So, a follow-up question is, have you ever worked with someone on who's getting a VA loan?
Yes. So answer is yes. We do a lot of VA loans. Guaranteed rate doesn't charge an origination charge, or we actually lower our fees per VA. So we do quite a bit of VA loans. I've done many, like even like VA
And
loans.
Mark, there's no down payment. I'm sorry.
It's 100% financing up to a certain loan amount, and then you can get a VA loan for $1.5 million if you want. I mean, there's a big range, and they're just a really great loan. So, yep, we work with those buyers all the time.
And then there's some kind of more specific questions for people. So I don't know how nitty gritty you want to get. Is there inventory available in 350 to 650 price range? If so, where and what type of housing?
yes, there is, and it depends on what you're open to. So your best bet about that is to really talk to an agent. If you're willing to go into Ventura, if you're willing to go into Santa Maria, we have, you can get a few places here in town that are condominiums in Goleta or Carpinteria that are, in the 650 or under range. And then we wanted to talk about the difference in buying land or buying a home. If you're a first-time home buyer, I would not recommend buying land, because going through the process of building a home is right. It's so complex.
So complex. If anybody wants to go through that process and would like to know how complex it is, please call me. I would love to talk about that.
It's brutal. It is brutal.
It's not for the faint at heart.
Is there land for sale right now in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties? Yes, there's always land for sale. The question is, how much are you willing to pay for it? I mean, there's a place over on West Mission, has a house on it, but the house needs to be torn down. The subfloors are not even there. The bathtub is sitting, and you can see down to the ground under the bathtub. So, I mean, that's pretty much land value that you're buying. So depends on what you're looking for, but there is land for sale.
Yeah, and then do all realtor and lenders work with newly built houses? Some of them have their own systems.
So we can both talk about that. On the lending side of it, I actually am one of those lenders that does do that. So there's a project in Guadalupe up by Santa Maria called Pasadena, and I'm one of the preferred lenders on that project. And then I've done a couple others here, one in Buellton and in Santa Barbara, and they do have their own system. So, if you do have questions about that, typically they've got a lender on site that you've got to get pre-qualified through them. And you don't have to use the lender on site, but you do have to get pre-approved through them. And then they also will typically give some kind of credit if you do use their preferred lender, just because they know their lender will get it done. And then Ruth Ann, do you want to talk about the process if you're working with a real estate agent and you go look at a
Absolutely. So, and that's a great question. So the key there is, when you go look at new homes, make sure that your realtor is with you. Because again, you want to have your own representation, even on new construction, because we know the ins and outs of that. We know that we can negotiate for you what they're not necessarily going to offer up. So bring your realtor with us. Some of them are really touchy. If you show up there without your realtor does not represent you, which means you don't have anybody fighting for you, and you're not going to get the credit for the coastal housing, which you really want.
That's right.
I see someone's trying to raise their hand. We can't communicate with you other than in the Q&A just because of the webinar format. So if you, hopefully you're able to drop your question in there. And if not, please reach out to one of us after the webinar for your questions.
And we will be sending out a recording of this webinar, feel free to add any last questions. Otherwise, we will be closing the webinar.
Yeah, you guys had some good questions, so.
Yeah.
Really good questions.
Anything else coming in, Kim?
Not that I see.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, attendees. Hopefully you got the information you needed. Our contact information is here. We encourage you to follow up with us if you have any follow-up questions. And Mark, Ruth Ann, thank you so much for your time today and your expertise. It was a delight to be with you.
My pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.